and then I'm also not speaking for, I have family in Israel. I'm not speaking for any of my family in Israel or anyone else. These are my opinions, which are, I believe they're congruent with the Jewish Voice for Peace feelings, and that's how come I'm a member of this group and have been for maybe like 15 years or something like that. And what happened for me is I am a Jewish person born and raised in the U.S. and Alabama specifically, and then moved out to Central Coast, California, Santa Cruz specifically, on the Awaswa speaking people stolen land, now stewarded by the Amma Mutsun people, and I do volunteer with them also. So that's made me very cognizant of the oppression and marginalization of Indigenous people everywhere. It's interesting, I got involved with this. I didn't really think that much about Israel or Palestine. I was more involved with local and environmental issues when I lived in Birmingham. But then after September 11th, 2001, I was involved there were vigils in Birmingham to try to keep the U.S. from bombing. And I met some of the people that were there, including Sis and Jerry Levin, who are very strong advocates and worked with a lot of Palestinians to try to end the occupation. And that's when I learned way more about what's going on with Israel and the U.S. support of an occupation that, almost everybody agrees is illegal. And I feel the occupation is harmful to Israel, and that it's harmful to Jews worldwide because it causes so much animosity. And I also, of course, I believe that it's harmful to Palestinians because it's just causing so much death, destruction, theft of land, and loss of many, many opportunities. So now I'm going to begin. I've been to Palestine and Israel, the West Bank only, but all over Israel twice, in 2004 and 2009. Both times I went, I'm a certified yoga teacher, and both times I went, I did volunteer yoga teaching. The second time I went there, I also did some volunteer work on an organic farm near Bethlehem in the West Bank. And I took part in other, different actions, working with the mainly an Israeli women's group, Maksum Watch, where women would go and be at the checkpoints that Israeli soldiers, Israeli soldiers maintain. And they would try to, they would just try to have they would advocate for Palestinians who were trying to get through and for fair treatment of the Palestinians trying to cross at the checkpoint. Let's see. So I'm going to begin. These are my slides. And then after that, I'm going to go over some action points of things we can do to support Israel Palestinians and stop the waste of U.S. tax dollars on providing more military weapons and so on to Israel. And first of all, I would totally like to say that, of course, I do not condone, and I don't expect anybody here does condone, Hamas's horrible criminal actions against Israeli citizens, on October 7th or at any other time. And I don't endorse any terrorism by any group of people whatsoever. And I do believe that Israel's reactions are definitely state terrorism. And that both, Hamas and Israel have committed war crimes. I'm not really going to go that much into the history. Some links were sent out. I'm assuming most people here know a good bit about the history, but there will be Q&A after. So now I'm going to see if I can get my slides to work here. Okay, this is Damascus Gate. It's part of the old city, the city walls that surround the old city of Jerusalem. And as you might guess from the name, it's where people used to come in when they were traveling from Damascus. And then at the top, you can see there's a space for guards to watch, and that is an Israeli soldier silhouetted in the window. So now, centuries after this was built, it's still being used, to watch over whoever is entering and exiting. And this picture, we're now in the old city. Jerusalem, by international law, is supposed to be divided into Christian, Muslim, and Jewish sections. This is in I think this is one of the Muslim sections, but as you can see from the menorah on top, this is one of the homes that has been taken over by a Jewish settler family. And in this case, it is the family of the late Ariel Sharon, who was alive when I took this picture. And settlers come in. Sometimes they'll buy these houses through a front, through somebody that has been convinced to act as a front, so that the people that are selling don't realize that they're selling to Jewish settlers. Sometimes it'll be the family is in debt and really has to sell. Other times the settlers will simply occupy or force the people out by coercion. I don't really know what happened in the Sharon's family case, but I do know this is they were definitely making their presence known by putting this giant menorah on top of the building. And then here we are, like this is in the old city of Jerusalem itself. I don't know how many of y'all have been here, but it's a very colorful place with bazaar, like a bazaar with lots of restaurants. And this is another picture inside the old city itself. This is in the Christian section because it's the cloisters of one of the churches there. And when I was there, I actually did attend church sometime. Not because I'm not Christian, but I would attend church simply to be friendly. And at this time, you can see the palm tree, but there was actually a big snowstorm this day. But the climate in Jerusalem is pretty mild, so it did not affect the interior courtyard. And this is just outside the city of Jerusalem. This is in one of actually, it might be a neighborhood of Jerusalem, but the main thing about this, I don't know if y'all have heard, there are a lot of archaeological excavations going on, of course. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And they are legitimate in the sense of course, there's tons and tons of ruins underneath Jerusalem, but often they are used as a way to simply push out. I don't know if they're used as a way to push out Palestinians, or it's simply that the state of Israel doesn't care if Palestinians have to leave the area so they can do archaeology. So this is a case where you can see the excavations going on, and then outside the fence, you can just see right up to some of these buildings, all that land has been taken. And then here you can see, this is a sign that was in one of the store windows near there for the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah. And in English, it says, "We will never leave our home, no to ethnic cleansing." So there was quite a movement, quite a pushback. And some families were able to take their cases through to the Israeli courts and actually be told that they did not have to leave. However, it says, "We will never leave our homes." But unfortunately, many families had to leave their homes. And in Palestine, it's very common that several generations live in one home, and then what will happen is there'll be a floor, and the original family will live, the original parents and children will live there. And then as the children become adults, they'll build a second story, and then one or two, or some of the children will live in the second story. Maybe they'll build a couple of other stories if they can afford to, and it's a large enough family. So you have several generations of people from the same family living in the same house. So you can see that many families were displaced by this. And then also that's what's happening in Gaza when you have the bombings and you hear about, I know people myself who've had almost all, and in a few cases, unfortunately, all of their family in Gaza wiped out because people live in these multi-generational, multi-story homes, and a bomb dropped on a house can kill, really has killed an entire family, to where the people I know that live here in the South Bay, they're the only ones left in their family, unless they're lucky enough to have some other relatives that don't live inside Palestine itself. When I was I'm from Alabama. I might not sound like I don't really have a Southern accent, but I am from Alabama. And so I'm very used to guns. I don't have a gun, but I'm really used to people having them around and talking about target shooting and hunting and all kinds of, defending themselves and all this kind of stuff. But I had never seen guns on display the way I saw them in Israel. And I've been I was in Nigeria when there was the military coup and there were police all over the streets, but the casual way that people have them in Israel is just kind of jaw-dropping to me. Like here's another example. Here's somebody who's actually saying the evening prayers. And I don't know if y'all can see very well, but right underneath his elbow, he actually has a handgun tucked in the side of his belt. underneath his prayer shawl. So, I would see people strolling like with baby carriage with a gun slung over their shoulder. And I did see that a few times when I was in the West Bank too. I would see some Palestinian young men walking around with firearms too, but not as common. Yeah. Like here's another example. This is from the city of David, which is one of the archaeological excavations, and it's almost like a theme park. And so now we're back. This is the Muslim quarter of Jerusalem. And this is, I can tell because it has all these decorations. This is somebody or some family members have returned from the Hajj to Mecca. And this decoration of the walls and the doorway is their way of signifying that people have come back from the Hajj. And so here we are in Jerusalem itself, looking at Al-Aqsa Mosque in one of the mosque minarets. Okay, I was showing you the home that the Ariel Sharon family appropriated in Jerusalem. This is another home that settlers appropriated. And wait, let me just go back a sec. One thing, if any of y'all have ever been to Palestine and Israel, you probably marveled at the incredibly beautiful limestone buildings and the stonework. So this is just a great, great example of that with these beautiful fountains in front of the building. And then the stone changes color in the different lights. It's so beautiful. Let's see. Well, so here we have some more soldiers, kind of, like I was saying, it's widely recognized how illegal the occupation is and how illegal it is to go inside Jerusalem and take homes away from Palestinians or Israeli Arabs, as some people call the Arabs who actually live within the recognized borders of Israel. Might is right. And we see a perfect example of it here in Jerusalem. And here are some more soldiers. This is in the Muslim quarter. In fact, I have a friend from Birmingham. He's not from Birmingham. His family's from Jerusalem, but he's a Palestinian American dual citizen, Muslim. And his family actually has their ancestral home, and he still has many cousins living near these shops where the soldiers are standing. And that's close to the Damascus Gate. This is the Wailing Wall, sometimes known as the Western Wall, since Israel, since we have the state of Israel, but I still call it the Wailing Wall. And this is mind-boggling to me. I went there, and when I've gone there, I've been there several times and literally just put my head against those ancient stones and cried. I've cried for the people of Israel that are suffering, and to my mind, bringing a lot of suffering on themselves and others, and to the Palestinians who, it's just a very sad situation all around. And then another thing about is, I call this picture separate but equal, because it's still, men and women can still not pray together at the Wailing Wall. They have to be separated. You can kind of see the line in the middle where there are a whole bunch of people on one side and then not too many on the other. I don't know if you can see from the picture, but that's actually kind of it's a fence that's been put up to divide the male and the female sides. And so this piece of graffiti, this is from Abu Dis. And I don't know how many of y'all have been to Israel and Palestine and actually seen these giant concrete pylons that compose a lot of the border wall. I'm not sure how tall they are. I'm guessing maybe like 20 feet high or something like that. And they have a lot of graffiti on both sides, done by all kinds of people, including international visitors. And witness to Jewish shame. I do feel very, very ashamed over this. And like I said, I'm speaking as somebody that even has Jewish, has family members in Israel. I just feel so ashamed. And with what's going on today, there's so many times when I've been so grateful and even just said prayerful thanks that my parents and grandparents are not alive to see this. My dad is a World War II veteran, and his parents were refugees from the pogroms who came over with their families, with their parents when they were children, from what at the time was the Russian Empire and hopefully will remain Ukraine. over in the western part of Ukraine. And then my grandmother's family was from, then it was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and now it is Poland near Warsaw. So, I mean, I just think it's sad that Jewish people, in a way, are kind of building ghettos. And so this is the last picture of Jerusalem. It's like children playing. These are, as you can see by their kippas, they're Israeli children. These are settler children whose families have moved into the Christian or the Muslim quarters of, not quarters, but sections of Jerusalem against international law and the agreements that were made when Israel became a state. So, and I say that as someone who's very well aware that every place I've lived in the U.S. was taken away. When I lived in Alabama, it was Cherokee and Creek land. Now that I'm here, it was a Waswas Ohlone land and Mutsun speaking Ohlone land. So. And here we are. This is Palestinian farmland in the West Bank, not too far from Bethlehem. And so this is an area. This is part of the territories that are called Area C. You know, occupied Palestine has Area C, which is more or less the rural areas, and a lot of times that's the fact that they're rural is used as an excuse to seize the land, and sometimes that'll simply be settlers come in and kind of fence it off. Sometimes the military will come in and fence it off, and people will literally be cut off from their farmlands, you know, where they just planted crops and everything like that. I think this is Al-Qadar near Bethlehem. Oh, hang on, let me go back and see if you can just see this little thing at the bottom. This is a guardrail. So this area is below one of the Israeli-only roads, and I'll be showing you a picture of the road a little later. But right now we're going to go to, when I was teaching yoga, I was invited to teach a wonderful orphanage. Their worldwide orphanage is called SOS Village, and they have a beautiful model where a bunch of children live together as a family, and they have a house with a mother in the house, and then the mother has several aunties to help her. And it's just, I mean, it's just a very, very beautiful place. I've visited it several times, very loving. And sometimes people, they might have their children there for a while because they can't afford to raise all their children. And then in that case, family members are able to come and visit their children or take them away for a while. But I can't remember who founded or set up this organization. It's an international orphanage. And so I was invited to teach yoga to the mothers and aunties. And you can see right, that's me in the front. And then behind you can see there's this guy who he was one of the administrators of the village. And of course, this is one of the little children there. And now, you know, back in this area where I was talking about people having their property taken away. Gosh, I mean, I've never seen as much barbed wire and razor wire as I saw when I was in Palestine, basically. It's just, and I mean, I've gone horseback riding and walked through a lot of farmlands that have lots of barbed wire fences. And also, I volunteer at a couple of the prisons here in California. I'm retired from the library, and I used to go into the jails. Even so, I've never, ever seen as much razor wire and barbed wire as I saw when I was in Israel and the West Bank. This is when I was there in 2009. I was part of a delegation with Interfaith Peace Builders. It was led by one of the staff there, Mike Daly, and I don't know if any of y'all know the late Scott Kennedy, who founded the Resource Center for Nonviolence in Santa Cruz. He was also a co-leader of that delegation. Now we're back at one of the schools, and despite everything that's going on, a lot of Palestinians, I would say most of them, are so extremely resilient, and they're like oppressed people everywhere, including, you know, my families when they were oppressed in Europe, very, very, you know, wanting to hold on to their culture. And these are children that are learning, these are Christian children, in fact, at a Christian school near Bethlehem, and they are learning the traditional folk dance, which is called Dabka. And here we are, you know, while they're doing all this, this is one of the Israeli settlements called Har Homa. It's probably much bigger now because this was taken in the first decade of the 21st century. And you can see settlements are, of course, usually on hills, right? Because it's just a better position strategically. And then the Palestinians would tend not to live on the hills because it's windier on the hills, you're less protected from the elements. Also, the soil isn't as good as when you go further down the slopes or in the river valleys. And of course, you don't have as much water as you do when you're in the valleys with the waterways. I know all of us in California can appreciate that. Okay, this is that Israeli-only road I was talking about. And you can see how well maintained it is, and it's going to be well lit at night. It's actually going through Area C. So this is a road that only Israelis are supposed to drive on. Interestingly, in a way, Israelis are not supposed to be going into the territories without permission, but it's kind of one of those things where the Israeli government and the military look the other way because of all the settlements and so on. So there are many, many Israeli-only roads. And one way you can tell the difference is, of course, they're better maintained. As somebody that grew up in the South, the South of the United States and knows a lot about segregation. I mean, I've seen that myself. The very badly maintained black areas of Alabama and Tennessee where I used to live, the roads were really bad shape. When you get into better neighborhoods, white neighborhoods, they're a lot better. So it's the same kind of thing going on here. Plus, on a Palestinian road, a lot of times you'll see boulders have been put across, or there'll be impromptu checkpoints, the maksums I was talking about earlier, where soldiers will just set up a place to basically stop anybody who's traveling through. And I'm talking about Palestinians driving through in the West Bank, which is supposed to be, their territory, right? But even so, they're not able to freely travel within their own territory. And that includes people going to work, going to school. Sometimes people can't get permits to visit their own family. You have cases of people, maybe they got married while they were at university, and then one of them is from one area of Palestine, the other one's from another, and they're not legally allowed to live together. But now we're back in Beit Jala. I mean, even so, like I said, Palestinians very resilient and very community oriented. This is Beit Jala, which is it's kind of a suburb, an ancient suburb of Bethlehem. And it's been historically known for stonemasonry work, which you can see in the background. Where we are right now, it's a school that was built and run by a very wealthy Christian Palestinian entrepreneur who built this gorgeous, gorgeous school. And he also has a conference center there, and I think there's a church, but it's a whole compound basically. And here you can see the man in the black shirt is named Ahmed Al-Azah, and he works for a Palestinian group in Beit Sahur called the Holy Land Trust that does a lot of peace activism and so on. And one of the things that Ahmed did is he worked with the woman you can see in the white shirt there, Sis Levin, and they were trained in a specific form of conflict resolution called peace builders. And Sis she's unfortunately deceased now, but she had a doctorate in education. And then she started working in Palestine and then trained Ahmed to be her assistant in doing that. And then when I came over, I was assisting them as well as teaching yoga. And you can see the woman in the brown shirt with the long hair. Her name is Titania, and she's the teacher for this class. She didn't speak much English, so Ahmed was translating. And I just speak a few words of Arabic, basically stuff like shukran, thank you. I mean, I certainly don't teach enough to be leading a class. And then with the kids, I didn't do full-on yoga. I kind of called it yoga-esque. It was more like playing and using a lot of the movements and the poses, just as a way to get the kids moving. And now we've gone from, So this is the last shot from the Bethlehem area. And now we're moving into Hebron, where I also spent time, both times I was there, 2004 and 2009. And so Hebron is another place, in fact, it's before Jerusalem. It's a place that y'all probably know. It's a very sacred place to the monotheistic religions. because it has the tomb of Abraham there and some of his descendants. And I mean, just so it's holy to Christians, Muslims, and to Jews. And I mean, you'll see some pictures of the tombs. They're just incredible. It's also home to the Ibrahimi Mosque, where the settler from the U.S., Baruch Goldstein, came in and killed dozens of people while they were doing their Friday prayers, wounding many, many others, and was actually killed, by people defending themselves. And some people, including some people in Israel's cabinet today, consider him as a hero and a martyr. But anyway, as a result of all this, the settlers coming in and settling right in the old city, as well as taking land from people's farms and orchards nearby. They came in, and so of course the military didn't do anything to stop them. Instead, what they did is they barricaded the area off so that now Palestinians who live in this neighborhood, instead of being able to walk from a more public area of Hebron, or Al-Khalil, which is the Arab name, you have to make really, really long detours around. Like, in other words, you might have to walk a mile to get someplace that if you could go through this barricade might just be like 2 blocks away. And this is a picture. When I was there, I also volunteered and taught yoga at it was an after-school program for teenage girls called Dreams, where they did a lot of art activities. And you can see, this is one of the drawings that one of the girls did. And the man who founded it called it Dreams because he wanted the kids to be able to dream and bring out their creative side and show their imagination and realize that there's life beyond the occupation that they and really their parents have always lived under. And here are some of the girls. You can see we're doing, if any of y'all do yoga, this is a variation of tree pose. And we did a lot of partner yoga. The man who ran the program was so kind. He asked me, he said sometimes people would come and do things with the kids that got them all stirred up and upset. He wanted to make sure that, because he'd heard that yoga could bring you within yourself, and he was afraid it would bring back some memories to these kids, most of whom have, if not post-traumatic stress disorder, they even have traumatic stress disorder from all the things that happened to them and their families. And I assured him that no, we're doing yoga more as a way to move around and get balance and to basically have some fun. These kids were just they were wonderful. I hope they're all doing okay now, because this was from 2009. Yeah, here you can see one of the girls was wearing a hijab. Most of them were Muslim because of Al-Khalil, or Hebron, is a mostly Muslim place, but not everybody has to wear the hijab. It's not an enforced rule, even though in a lot of places it's customary, and sometimes I would wear one. It's definitely not a requirement. Oops, sorry, I skipped it. Well, I'll just go to this one first. So I thought y'all might like to try this pose yourself. This is with the kindergartners and my friend because she has a little kindergarten. It's really good for your sinuses, and it's that time of year when our respiratory problems can kick up. So you just lift up your arms like this and spread them back, and then you're going to open up your eyes and your mouth and stick your tongue out and say, and you can imagine kids love doing this. There's nothing more fun than seeing about 20 little kids going. Now I'm going to switch back to this picture. This is in one of those areas. There used to be there are all these shops here, but unfortunately, because of the settler incursions and the military, the Israeli military and police allowing that to continue, a lot of these shops are closed, partly because of harassment and vandalism from settlers, and partly because they didn't really have enough customers since it's so hard to get to this part of Hebron now. So I was talking to this gentleman when I was on a whole tour. It wasn't just me, it was maybe like 15 or 20 of us. And he was explaining to us that whoever owned the shop, nobody really knew where he was. These packages had come, but nobody knew how to get them to the man, so they were just sitting there. And these are some fabric. In fact, if you could read the boxes, it's some kind of it says velvet on the boxes, so I imagine it's some very beautiful fabric. And then he said that these packages had been here for months, if not over a year, which is amazing. Like nobody had taken them. They're just sitting there waiting for this guy to come back. Yes. And so this is very near the last picture with the packages on the steps. And you can see this guy was talking to us also. And then you can see here's the shop that's open, and next to it is one that's closed in the old city of Hebron. And then this is one of the reasons that there's so little shopping in this area, besides it's hard to get to, you know. This is a home that's occupied by at least one Jewish Israeli settler family. And some of the people that come here, of course, they're very extremist, and they completely believe that all Palestinians should leave, that this is the land only for Israel. They apparently haven't read the part of the Bible where God also promised Hagar and Abraham's son Ishmael that his descendants would have land in the area too. They're just gung-ho believers that God has given this area to them and everybody else should go away. So what they do is, a lot of times they'll actually throw trash and rocks and things like that down on Palestinians passing by and shopping. And that's how come the Palestinians had to put up this kind of fencing, over these, what used to be open air alleyways. And I mean, I saw some of that, I heard people yelling and throwing some things, and sometimes you'd see like big chunks of concrete up there. We had little kids from the settlements pelting us with rocks. And we also I was arguing with the settler man. Can't even remember what it was about, but I think what happened is I was telling him I was Jewish and trying to explain, and he just spit at me. He spit right in my face.
Oh my God.
6 inches away. So imagine what the Palestinians deal with. And not only that, this is from the very extremist, violent, what's it called? The Koch Party that was founded by Meir Kahan, the rabbi. And it's such an extremist organization that it's actually been outlawed in Israel. However, what will happen is some of the settlers go in and vandalize the Palestinian areas of this Palestinian city and put up graffiti everywhere. So this is graffiti from the Koch Party that's on one of those closed shops. And then another thing that happens is you will have the Israeli military will come and they will set up basically, I don't know what you call it, surveillance posts with snipers right up on the rooftops. Like this is some Palestinian family's home. And the Israeli soldiers simply came and told them, we're setting up a base, a surveillance base with firearms right on top of your home. So, people use their homes. I mean, not only is it invasive and threatening, it's also taking away a space that people use for doing their laundry. People eat up on their roofs, have gardens up there. So that's the kind of thing that happens. And here's another example. Up in the background, you can see, I can't remember which settlement it is. It might be Kiryat Arba, but it's one of the Jewish Israeli settlements that rings the old city of Hebron. And here's some more of that fencing with just bunches of the razor wire, which, this isn't razor wire that's just there while they, and they're going to put it up somewhere. No, these just have these huge rolls of razor wire around as barricades. Here's an example. This is another street that's shut off, and then you can see where the netting is. That's another outpost for soldiers. And here are some of the kids going to school. So the kids go to school and they have to go by these things and through these things. And I've heard that sometimes, I didn't see this myself, but I've heard that at other times, I talked to other people that work as escorts and even soldiers that were there with the UN and stuff. And they would say that sometimes the Israeli soldiers would have tanks with those guns on the turrets, and they would just be following the kids around while the kids are simply going to school. And we're talking about kids this age. So obviously it's just a way to, not only scare the kids, but also to intimidate their parents. But fortunately, these kids look very happy to see us. They didn't seem that intimidated. Okay, so now this is in Tel Aviv, and I have a friend who his father's family is from. This is from Jaffa, looking towards Tel Aviv. His family's from Jaffa, which used to be known for those famous oranges. Probably heard of Jaffa oranges, and this is looking towards where his family used to have their, not just his family, but many families used to have their orange groves, and then it was all appropriated by Jewish Israelis. And that's what, when you hear about the Nakba or the disaster, that's what my friend's father's family, like so many other families, had to leave because they were under threat. There were massacres, or people were just afraid of the Israeli military and fled, thinking that hopefully they would be able to come back soon. But of course, most of them never were able to come back. This is one of the olive trees, the symbol of Palestinian endurance. And they do say some of these olive trees date from the Roman times, which I also heard when I was in parts of Spain, is that the trees can just live, I mean, they're kind of like redwoods. They're very, very long lived. And some of the olive oil there is called rumi, which is Arabic for Rome. And I thought, because we're in the Christmas season, I want to show this picture. This is from Nazareth, from the Basilica of the Annunciation. And there's beautiful artwork in it from all over artists from all over the world doing their paintings of Mother Mary. And this is one of course, the Virgin of Guadalupe, done by a Mexican artist. So happy holidays, and I really hope the spirit of peace and goodwill, comes to us all, and that there's too much fighting all over the world, and our country is really supporting way, way, way too much of it. And then this is down at the border near Zickham Beach, which is one of the beaches where the Al-Aqsa flood, the Hamas terrorist attacks, went onto the beach near this kibbutz, and there were a lot of killings there. This picture is from 2009 though, and you can see this is the menorah, like an abstract sculpture menorah that actually has lights that can be turned on for the different nights of Hanukkah. And then you can see these slender things that are being used as candles. These are those Qassam rockets that you've probably heard about that were fired into the kibbutz over time. And somebody saved a bunch of them and decided to make a menorah out of them. I like this as a symbol of hope, and just showing, like I said, people can, people are so resilient and can be creative and have dreams no matter what the circumstances. And then so I wanted to end with this little boy. This is from Al Khalil, my friend's kindergarten. This is from a festival they were having. I think it was the end of Eid. And then here's somebody from an older generation. In Hebron, she saw our delegation there, and she came up and was very excited and was flashing peace signs to us. Oh, I'm sorry, that went beyond. Okay, now I think I'll just leave her up here, and then I think we have about another 45 minutes or so. So next, I was going to go into a sheet of actions that we can take to support a permanent ceasefire and everything, which I also believe is pro-Israeli. I don't think that this horrible bombardment is doing Israel the slightest bit of good. We can see that anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish feeling, hate crimes are going way off the charts. And ditto, of course, with, hatred against Arabs and Muslims. But before I go to that, I thought we could stop and have some time for questions. And then as we go into the next part, I really wanted to go more into open discussion. So can I ask, who's going to moderate that?
I can do that. Let's see.
Thank you, Mike.
We may make it a group effort, but
Yeah.
Mike will take the lead, and I will try to
Okay.
include that. I do want to mention Well, I can mention as soon as we start, a discussion, how we might do it, some little guidelines and things like that.
Go ahead,
you-
Oh,
Ron.
do you know what? Oh, I'm sorry, just quickly wanted to mention it's one of the guidelines. We talked before about somebody will be reading to see if there are any comments in the chat. But if you have audio, if you could please ask your questions, spoken questions instead of through chat, just to keep people, just to kind of cut down on the distraction.
Just
Use
to,
the raise hand function like this.
yeah, it's you'll find it under either reactions at the bottom of your screen, or on my screen it says more, and I click more, and then it says reactions, and you click reactions, and you'll see something about a raised hand. And when we see your hand raised, then we know to call on you, and you're usually
Yeah.
the first one on the top left. So most of you know how that works, but perhaps not everybody.
Yeah. What, did everybody doze off? What happened?
No, we're here.
Okay, come on, you guys.
No,
There's gotta be a few questions.
we might want to stop sharing screens so it'd be easier to see people's hands, but unless Dora can see them. Can you see them, Dora?
Yeah, I only see like
no,
a hand.
but wait, let me see if I can figure out how to stop screen sharing. No. Oh, no, I see it. Sorry.
Okay.
There. There.
Okay, let me go full screen. Use it
Oh.
as a way of seeing everybody who's attending. Let me see if I could do that.
It depends on if there are more people than there are squares. And I think we have a few more people than that. So
Okay,
right.
yeah, we got 26. Yeah, great. Okay, so here's gallery. I'll punch gallery. There we go. So I don't see any hands raised. present.
Teresa has a
I
question.
think Dora was going to continue, actually. Am I correct, Dora?
No, I'm not. Teresa has a question, it looks like. So
Okay.
please go ahead, dear.
Oh, thank you, Dora. Sorry, I just got a kink in my throat. Actually, it's less of a question and two comments. Nice comments. My favorite of your photos was the one of it reminded me of that people from Vets for Peace will remember this one. The quote from the Bible, "They shall beat their swords into plowshares."
Yeah.
And that's the art thing, and we could like make "they shall beat their like swords into civic art" or something like that. And that is actually, I think that is actually might be a really nice art form to take up as a resistance. But my second comment was when I was in my youth, I have an archaeology degree. Yeah, and I actually worked as in Israel long time ago in the 1980s, when I was a student on like one of those student internship type things in northern Israel, near to the Lebanese border. But you were talking about the Israeli archaeological, it's a part of the government, yeah. And actually one of the great purposes that I learned from experience is that the use of archaeology as a substantiation of whatever political view you want to say. It's actually more than just taking over those people's houses. It's taking over the story. It's and with that substantiating all of the actions. I'm sure you can think of other examples too, but that's what I learned actually from my it may not have been one of the things that was intended to impart to the students, but that is what I took home from use of archaeology. And I like that. So those two comments.
Thank you so much, Teresa. That's a really good point, and I didn't really go into that so much, but yes, it's true. Like a lot of this archaeology, it's very much a way of showing, I don't know what, the antiquity of Hebrews and Jews on the land, which of course you could do to show the antiquity of the Palestinians on the land or of the Bedouins on the land and all this. But and then I've also worked in archaeology myself, and now I do volunteer work with the Amamutsan, and there's some things from the Santa Clara mission that are basically in the areas where the indigenous people live, just in the mission system. And it's really, really fascinating. You can learn a whole lot. So I want to make it clear, I do not have anything against archaeology itself. But as you said, Teresa, there's so many times when, just like any other thing, it can be manipulated and used as an excuse. So thank you so much for bringing up that point. Does anyone
Okay.
else have any?
Well, I'll wait.
Oh, sorry. I also wanted to say I would be happy to send a picture of the. I agree with what you said about beating the swords into plowshares with the menorah, and I'm sure that's part of the intent behind it. I'd be happy to send a copy of that picture. I took it myself, so you don't really need any. I don't need anybody's permission to send it out.
Yeah, I thought it was so clever that using these rockets that they didn't look terribly fearsome, but obviously no one appreciates someone firing these things at your community. So I thought it's so clever to make. I was wondering if they'd make a wind chime, like maybe something you could play music on or something. But the other thing was the thing that doesn't seem to get very much play is for the last 500 years, this was all under the Ottoman Empire. And you don't just seem to hear much about that. And okay, that was kind of a backwater part of the empire, but you had all the religions living there in some sort of equilibrium, and you just don't seem to hear much. I mean, you hear a lot, the Roman Empire, like 2,000 years ago, then everybody, I think even the Mongols came through around 1000 and got stopped near at Nazareth or something, and then they had to go back home for whatever reason. But I mean, everybody's had a share of this history. The Crusaders and the built forts up in Lebanon and what have you. But for the last 500 years, until the First World War ended the Ottoman Empire, nobody much heard about it. It was ignored. It was Jerusalem. Where it's absolutely stunning. And I'm sure there's a lot of archaeology there, and that's probably where a lot of the stonework and what have you was constructed during that period. So it's just kind of amazing to me that the fact that they were basically all Turks, up until the First World War, and then the British and that fascinating movie, which I love, but I'm sure I don't know quite how accurate it was, but Lawrence of Arabia showed a lot of very interesting cultural features of the Bedouin tribes and how they had a very difficult time getting together and organizing themselves. And of course, you needed that white guy with the blue eye and his Academy Award to come and show him how it's done. I just thought I'd leave that alone because it was a great movie, but probably leaves a little bit to the imagination. Who else have we got? Might want to ask Dorah a question or make a statement. Boy, everybody's totally happy with your presentation.
Or Dorah, perhaps you would like to go on to things that we can do.
Thank you. And then thank you. I would. And then also I also wanted to mention when Mike was talking, thank you so much for your comments. I think I sent links to videos that Ron sent out, and I'm not sure which one, but at least one of them mentioned the Ottoman Empire, because that's so true. That yes, this whole area was called a sanjak, which was the Turkish name for, an administrative district. This whole area was a certain administrative system under the Ottomans, and also the Ottomans were Muslim, but the Jews and Christians were considered people of the book or dhimmis. So there was, at different periods that went back and forth of how much harmony there was between the different religions, but usually according to the Quran, what would happen is Christians and Jews were not allowed to bear arms or to fight in the armies usually, and so they had to pay a special tax, but they were supposed to be treated with respect because they're like, for instance, Moses and Jesus are considered, and Abraham are all considered prophets in the Muslim religion. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Yes.
let's call
And
on
it's
Lisa.
like,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Lisa.
I was gonna say
Hey,
we can call on Lisa now, and Ron was your hand was raised. There it is. So Lisa and then Ron.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. Well, we're not going to be able, or I'm not going to be able to stay for the whole evening. So I'm wondering if Dorah could share with us now some of her ideas about actions for us to take.
okay, let me just take Rom's question, then I'll be glad to. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Dora. Now, Palestine is known to export and produce some very good olive oil. And now with everything that's going on, I have no idea what the landscape is and all this. How many settlements are there? How many are captured? How many are not? Blah blah blah. So what is the state of that? Who owns those olive trees now? Are they do they feel safe enough to go pluck the olives and make the olive oil, or is it just a dead zone? Well, what's the deal there? What's happening?
Oh, thank you so much. That's such a wonderful question because, yes, actually, olive oil is so fantastic. And I was lucky to be able to go to an olive harvest festival in northern Palestine. There's also the land of Canaan, Canaan, is a wonderful nonprofit that has a co-op to get fair pricing for the olive, for the olive oil, the olive tree farmers, the orchardists. You know what? I'm sure the production, well, of course, in Gaza, it's probably pretty much been flattened. And I personally myself saw cases where the settlers were coming and fencing off the olive trees. And a lot of times the walls that have been put in, they'll have gates where people are supposed to be able to have access to their orchards and farmlands, but often they're not. I'm sure it's been diminished, but the people are going on as best they can. And I would suggest, I'm sorry, I'm going to put it in the chat. I can't remember the name of the website, but Land of Canaan. If you go to their website, they'll probably have some good information. So thank you for that question. And then I think 650, sorry, don't know your name. Did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, it's David. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but
Yeah.
a lot of the photographs of cultural and educational programs for children reminded me of a story that was on Democracy Now! On Thursday. I don't know if people saw it. It was a sort of a drama school for Palestinian children, and the previous director had been killed. I'm not sure how long ago, but the current director was. The offices were basically infiltrated by the Israeli Defense Forces, and computers were overturned, desks were overturned, the offices were completely trashed, and the head of the program, and they showed footage of the children participating in the program. The director was taken hostage and fortunately was released, but that story was on Democracy Now! Just this past, it was either Thursday or Friday, and I wondered if other people had seen it.
Yeah. That was
I did
fascinating.
see it. It was the Freedom Theater in Jenin, sorry. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It's a really good story, and it's exactly the kind of thing, the resilience that people have, that we can all see, the art, knowing that you're carrying on a tradition, and yeah, it's a beautiful example. Thank you, David. Shall I go on now?
Yeah.
And I don't know, hopefully y'all can see, I think I'm screen sharing this sheet, Gaza and the West Bank, which I can also send to, I guess I can send it to Ron, right? And maybe you could send it out to people. But anyway, these are some suggestions for what we can do. What's going on with my page? Oh, hang on. But anyway, so of course, there's always the ever popular contacting your congressperson and senators, and just keep calling them. I mean, you can call them and call them and call them just as much as you want to. And then you can also, call them, email them, go by their offices. I was at a sit-in at Rokana's office, and I doubt it was just because of the sit-in, but I'm sure it made an impact on him because he saw how many people are serious about this, and then had a Zoom call with hundreds of his constituents. And then he recently did call for a ceasefire. And then you can also contact President Biden. I mean, I can't tell you how upset I am with President Biden over this. And then I don't know why I can't get I was just going to move to. Anyway, I can't figure out how to make the screen show you the whole rest of the sheet, but I will email this. And basically the other things are, please stay informed and also talk to people you know. And just today I went to an event at my temple that was held by some of the extreme Zionists, and they had a speaker with a very Zionist group called Stand With Israel. And, I just felt like I didn't agree with what he said. And I also felt like he had a lot of distortions in there, according to my opinion. And I felt he kind of manipulated the information that he was presenting. But one time is very interesting because he actually said one reason people sympathized with Israel is that it's human nature to, because people perceive Israel as being very strong, that it's, and then he said, and it's human nature to sympathize with oppressed people. So I'm like, great, he's admitting that Palestine is oppressed, but apparently he's quite okay with that. So anyway, I was there and just thinking, how can I talk to people that really feel that way? And I think Ron said that he figured out a way to share with you something from the Jewish group called If Not Now, which with Jewish Voice for Peace has been doing so many different protests. And it has some, just has some suggestions on how to talk to people about this subject and any other subject that's uncomfortable. And that's the kind of thing I thought maybe we could all talk about. So stay informed, have those hard conversations with people, and do not expect, of course, that one conversation or even 10 or 100 conversations is going to make a difference. But what I've noticed for myself is when I listen to people and I sincerely want to know why they believe the way they do, and I spend most of my energy on really listening to them, it makes the conversation easier. And plus I learn a lot myself, and I understand too that a lot of Jewish people, including many of my own relatives, are very traumatized by this whole issue. And it's partly how Holocaust education is done, in my opinion. And how, anyway, I'm not going to go into that. But basically just realizing there is a lot of fear, because how else could somebody really think that just totally bombing a civilian population is going to help anything? How could anybody think, one, that's going to destroy a terrorist group, a lot of whose leaders are not even in Gaza, or two, that bombing people and causing so much death and destruction is going to end a problem and not just perpetuate the cycle of violence. And then the last thing was that I could think of was, to be sure, like attend vigils, go to demonstrations, set up panels or go to panels, and in other words, do things publicly, maybe even have a peace Sabbath. We've done that here. Okay. And now I see there's some more questions. So
Yes.
Yeah, let me welcome Mariana. We haven't seen you in ages and ages. You're looking well. Yeah, why don't you ask your question, honey?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I've been writing our congressperson where I am in Walnut Creek, DeSaulnier, is somewhat sympathetic and has said he has pictures of like Gandhi and King on his wall at work. So it may be that the way to approach him is sort of more of a general thing than worrying about Israel-Palestine. I mean, frame it that way. But I've been wondering about writing to Padilla and Butler. And, Butler is not going to be around. She doesn't really have any political background, apparently. So, I mean, should we be also pressing the people who are running for senator to replace her.
Yeah.
And is there any particular way that's recommended to approach LaFonza Butler, if I've got her name right?
Well, I would open this question up to other people too, and I'm not a political expert. I have been contacting her, and I haven't done this personally, but I know other people who have certainly gone to talk to Maxine Waters. I think it's, now I'm blanking on the other people that are running. Is it Adam Schiff and who's the other? Kate Porter. And apparently Porter and Schiff do not really have very good stands. Yes, this is a really good time. Let people know this matters. I mean, this is really frightening, especially if Trump is the Republican candidate. And if it's not Trump, it's probably going to be somebody who has views that probably most of us don't agree with. No offense to any Republicans here, but yeah, I think this is a really good time to make your points known. And I'd also like to say I was on a Zoom call with one of Padilla's aides on Friday. I guess there were several hundred people on the call, and Padilla's aide just kept parroting the line of whatever, Israel has the right to defend itself, blah, blah. So, let's just keep calling him and letting him know. And this was on a call with mostly people who are Muslim, by the way, and he was still saying stuff like that. So, yeah, and also I think it's really important for politicians to know Jewish people and Muslims are very united on this. Like, you can't really go, oh, I have to decide, am I for Jews or am I for Muslims? It's beyond that.
Okay. I will call on Tom, but first I will mention, Mariana, that Senator Butler also has votes, and there are amendments and there are measures in the Senate. And so if she'd be a good person to get in contact with.
But she should still be contacted, because the fact is she
Correct,
will
yeah.
be voting on things.
Okay, Tom?
Yeah.
Hi, I think you're talking about me.
Yes. There
Hey,
you are.
thank you. Thanks to Peninsula Peace and Justice for keeping me on their email list and giving me a chance to see announcements for this. I did post about this on Daily Kos a few hours ago, and the reason I'm raising my hand is because and I appreciate that we need to have discussions, which is why I posted about this. This is a very difficult situation, and we need conversations to progress. And a couple of commenters said some fairly expected things. One is that Jewish Voice for Peace would have credibility if they condemned Hamas unequivocally or outright, and that's their own personal standard. But then another commenter states something like Jewish Voice for Peace has basically joined Hamas and wanting to eliminate Israel. So I guess my question is, what do you have? I hate to make you respond to that, but I guess, does Jewish Voice for Peace have any position on those two things about eliminating Israel? And but my more relevant question, I think, is how do we engage and carry the conversation when we meet responses like that?
How do we respond with questions like that? Is that what you said?
Yeah, how do you respond to questions like that? How do we engage with in these difficult conversations when we're met with statements like Jewish Voice for Peace basically wants to eliminate Israel, just like Hamas, and that they don't have any credibility.
Okay. Yes, I was trying to look on my phone and go online and see if, I can't 100% say that Jewish Voice for Peace has condemned Hamas, but I'm pretty sure that we did condemn Hamas. I know our chapter condemned Hamas and this terrorist attack. So I really, in fact, when I was at the temple event today, people were saying things. We have to remember that a lot of people equate being for a ceasefire, not even going to a protest, simply being for a ceasefire as being pro-Hamas or standing up for Hamas, and wanting to push, wanting to destroy the state of Israel. So there's nothing you can do when people have that kind of view. I mean, those are people that we're really not going to be able to argue with. That's the kind of person I'm talking about. Let's just listen to them. What is their viewpoint? One of the items that I sent out and that I believe Ron said he posted on a website is it's written by an Israeli woman who's at the University of California, Santa Cruz, my hometown right now. And she put together a pamphlet called something like How to Debate a Zionist. And that's one of the PDFs that is available for y'all. And Ron's going to tell you more about that, exactly how to get it. Yeah, but I mean, so I would say that would be the thing to point out. And I do want to say that I know I've heard some Jewish Voice for Peace and other people in different groups say that Hamas has the right to self-defense, because if you actually look at it, Palestine is an occupied territory. And a lot of things that the state of Israel did are not supposed to be done in occupied territories. That would include moving populations. And they're just like, Chinese have moved ethnic Chinese Han people into Tibet. That's also illegal under international law. And then also, of course, destroying buildings, killing innocent civilians is totally illegal in an occupied territory anywhere else. And the last thing I'll mention is the way that Israel's cut communications, cut off electricity and water, the way that they have a ban on how far fishing boats can go out. All these different things are really are against international law. And that also when occupied people have a legitimate, they are allowed to use physical force or violence in self-defense. But I want to say that I don't consider what Hamas did was self-defense. Just like I don't consider Israel bombing Gaza as self-defense. That goes beyond into a war crime. But sometimes I have heard people say, and it is legally, it is true that Hamas and any other group in an occupied territory that's being attacked by the occupiers does have the right to defend itself. And then it would just, so, just saying that.
For what it's worth, I replied that you had expressed a love for Israel tonight and concerned that mistreatment of Palestinians is actually harming Israeli interests. That's how I respond.
Thank you, Tom. And you know what? It's also harming U.S. interests. I mean, we're being seen, and we are. Israel could never, ever, ever do this without us. And even when I was at this event, which was a very pro-Zionist event at Temple Bethel and Aptos today, I actually heard the guy that was speaking, one of the speakers was saying that when the Yom Kippur War happened, Israeli intelligence could see that there was a buildup of forces in Syria and Egypt, and that Israel was probably going to be attacked. But what happened is, according to him, he claimed that Israel did not do a preemptive strike because Henry Kissinger, who was Secretary of State for the U.S. at that time, told Israel that the U.S. would not back such an attack. And so we can see that what Israel's doing now is obviously the U.S. is so complicit in the arms that are,
Okay,
and
so let's.
Okay.
I was just saying, but so we'll go to Analoy, and I hope I have your name right, David. You all have your hand still raised. You have another question or comment?
After Analoy.
Yeah, right. But I just want to make sure. We'll go to Analoy next.
Well, I just wanted to say that Ron, you and one other person about a week and a half ago sent out what I thought was a very succinct statement to use as a script and contacting our representatives. And I haven't done it yet, but I hope I still have it. But I'm wondering if you could send it out again, just in case people would like something that was where the words were put together nicely already.
I would need to see what you saw. We've sent a few action alerts out the last couple weeks or so. So if you
Was
could
that like the
email
letter
it.
to Kevin Mullen, maybe?
It might have been something to Kevin Mullen. It was a succinct statement and sort of a script to use when you're calling.
No, it sounds like one of the alerts to our senators. And so Yeah, I would have to know which one it is.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to send it to our email, we can try to
If
do
I can
that.
find it, if I haven't deleted
Okay.
it. Yeah.
I just
All
look
right.
under SMPA in your search and you should be able to find all the old ones because it's not that
Okay.
old, obviously.
No, it's not.
Yep.
It's just a week and a half ago or so.
Okay. Okay.
Speaking of SMPA and our email address, if anybody's not on our email listserv and would like to get on it, it's in the chat and you can send us an email saying, please add me or something. And that way you can get these kinds of action alerts and information about meetings like this and next month. Okay, so let's go to, I believe that's David. If I got your name wrong again, I'm apologizing. I can't hear you though.
You got your phone number, but we don't. You unmute yourself. You can't.
Looks like he's unmuted. Let's see if we can
Uh,
fix him up a little bit here.
I'm unmuted, try it. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, so just, I don't know, these are just random thoughts about, I've been, whenever I'm solicited for campaign contributions from legislative people who are not supporting a ceasefire, I've been responding by explaining the bare minimum what I need in order to continue providing support to these congressional people. Immediate ceasefire, the flow of humanitarian aid in order to avert, humanitarian catastrophe. And the second thing was just rather than in writing to legislative people, rather than focusing on, who has a right to defend themselves. I mean, none of these actions are justified, and but the focus really needs to be on diplomatic solutions, and starting with a ceasefire. And some kind people need to understand that if they're going to live in the area in some kind of peace and safety, that they have to start looking for solutions and treating each other as equals. And that's usually how I conclude my letters to congressional people. I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense, but
no, it make a lot of sense.
yeah.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Mary, unmute yourself, Mary. Haven't seen you in ages.
I know. It's good to see you. If anybody notices that hand going on and off, I couldn't figure out where the hand was, so I kept checking other things. So, Dorah, this has been fantastic to hear you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. In
Okay,
the
thank-
little, pardon? In the little flyer that's over here to the right, it shows on mine, that says Gaza and the West Bank, what can we do? The number 4, or it could be 3, anyway, is allowing all humanitarian aid in. That was forgotten to put on. And the
thank you.
that's okay. It's not your fault, Dorah. I think I know exactly who did it. And then the senators aren't included in that. And there's going to be a vote on $14.3 billion sometime after January 8th. That's when they say the Senate and I guess House goes back in to session. And you can look up the senators. I can't remember now if it's senate.butler.gov or they put their name first, butler.senate.gov. I've given up on trying to find a piece of paper that said that. And then one guy suggested this, and I think it sounds great. Promise you won't vote for them in the next election if they don't do those things. And the 4 things, including letting all humanitarian aid in. And Ron and Mike, is there a chance for the people you have emails to that you could send out that little thing that says, you know, Gaza and West Bank, what can we do? Because it gives people phone numbers and it gives them the, you know, a little bit of an overview of, it's easier to work from a piece of paper than have to go look it all up yourself.
Yeah, I
Well,
think we
once I
usually,
see, go ahead,
yeah,
Mike.
go ahead, Ron.
I'm sorry. So I mean, you know, we've been, I think, sending various forms of that out to our email listserv in the form of action alerts and things like that. Maybe not with everything on there, but some timely points as different kinds of legislation and amendments, you know, for instance, to the supplemental and so forth, as you know, the supplemental funding has come up. So I'll have to look at it and get a better look at it to see what's there and see what we might have missed.
Yeah, yeah.
What I would
We-
love to do is, if anybody's interested, but I'll do it myself. I'm not going to do it tomorrow because thunderstorms are expected. But I think Mullen and Ron and Mike, you'd know better. But although I live in Half Moon Bay, I think just going across the hill and passing flyers out in Mullen's district, like I was thinking of, híjole, what is that, Trader Joe's in San Mateo, not the one so much in San Carlos. I think that's more rich people go there, but just pass them out as many hours as one can do. You know, that's what I want to do. So I'm
Well,
going to give
yeah.
my phone number in case anybody is interested in that.
Okay.
Watch your heads go down and write it on a piece of paper because it's, hi, Anna Loy, you're a doll. So it's 650-222-6361. And it says Interfaith Peace Coalition.
Hmm.
But I think that, I mean, we've got to raise people's, I mean, just when Mullen comes back, because he should, I mean, but it was the same as with Ro Khanna. He should have right away too, but it takes a lot of letters to get him to do something. And Mike, are you guys practicing anything like that the Jewish Voice for Peace has done, where literally a little sit-in, a sit-in in their office?
Well, we joined, there was a group, we never found out if they had a name, but they had a very good rally in front of Mullen's office Saturday. And
Great.
so I attended that. There were about 20 folks, mostly
That's great.
Arab American women, and they brought babies and signs and a bullhorn. And so they were there from 9 to 12. And myself and Ruth Robinson from the Grannies were there.
Mm.
And so we had
Raging
some,
Grannies.
correct, Raging Grannies. And so we joined them. And amazingly enough, a woman named, it was a very hard name to pronounce, Iraqi lady, works. Honey, could you turn that off? The aide in our foreign policy department, which we did have a sit down with Kevin Mullen's office, but it was mainly about Ukraine some months back. But anyway, she came down with another aide, and they passed out some snacks and some water to the women. I thought it was so sweet. And,
The lady from Mullen's office?
correct. Yeah, Ragda Karadzik or something. Anyway, so obviously the staff, as you've seen in the newspaper, the staffs in many places, even in front of the White House, they had to disguise themselves to get fired. But they all said, we're not buying this. It's totally inhuman to say, oh, let's wait for a while on a ceasefire. When in fact, if you look at it, even from the Israeli point of view, the hostages who you'd like to get back alive, not shoot them,
really,
like they just did. But the fact remains they need water, and they need food, and they need medicine, and they need a safe place to be until they're liberated. So how bombing helter-skelter and hospitals and tunnels, I mean, you don't know who's in the tunnel. Maybe your hostages are in the damn tunnel. I mean, it seems so hysterical on the part of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. Like, do they know anything about what they're doing? Just striking out blindly, and it's unbelievably self-defeating and basically stupid. And then for our politicians to say, oh, let's give this a little more time, to say, oh yeah, why don't you wait till your grandparent gets shot or something? I mean, give me a break. It's so nonsensical and without any logic or common sense. If nothing else, who's supposed to protect the hostages if you're dropping 2,000 bombs here, there, and everywhere? You really expect to have any of them come back? And then yesterday, evidently, they had 3 that were coming back out of captivity, and they shot them dead. And they had white flags. I mean, who, where is this going?
They break international law to shoot even an enemy combatant, you know, that's trying to surrender is not supposed to be shot. I mean, a level of passion on this, and I'm sorry to interrupt. Were you finished?
That's all right. You're the guest speaker.
Okay, I'm just going to point out that Sharon Minsick, I think, was kind enough. She actually looked up the JBP condemnation of Hamas, where they say, and it's in the chat, I'll just read the first line, therefore. We wholeheartedly agree with leading Palestinian rights groups. The massacres committed by Hamas against Israeli civilians are horrific war crimes. So, you know, it's just a very common thing, because I've had this said to me a lot, is that, you know, you won't condemn this and that. And it's like, well, I do condemn this and that. So, but, you know, people just repeat, no, you know what I mean? It's just common propaganda to claim that we're not condemning.
Correct.
Thank you so much, George, for finding that.
Okay,
And-
but we will, after this is over, we'll look through and maybe resend out that letter and summation plus contact information for folks who do want to make some phone calls. I mean, the word collectivist to me is a good word. You know, it's like people that they may not be able to join a meeting, or maybe you live in Half Moon Bay, don't have a car, perhaps. You know, I mean, you can get on that phone or that internet and make your voice heard, which is, I think, a really worthwhile thing to do. So,
For anybody in Half Moon Bay, you can just catch the bus. It leaves you right off in front of
Okay.
Trader Joe's.
Okay, sorry, Mary, I'm gonna, well, maybe this will be the last thing that we have, but Mike Kramer put something in the chat, which I think would be a good idea to amplify here. And it is that the question is, does Jewish Voice for Peace ever do a Zoom meeting, or maybe anything else, focused on people's opinions on what a lasting peace in Palestine would be, in their opinion? And
Okay,
that's for
you know,
Dorah.
okay, thank you so much. Of course, that's a really good question, which people always say when they're hedging for time and answering something, but it is a good question. However, Jewish Voice for Peace also has the opinion that as diaspora Jews, and of course, we're not all Jewish people who are members of Jewish Voice for Peace, but most members of Jewish Voice for Peace are not actually living in Israel or Palestine. And so we don't really want to, you know, we don't feel it's up to us to say what the lasting peace would be.
Gotcha. Thank you, Karen.
That's understandable, yeah. Well, you might look at this fellow named Miko Peled, who's wrote a book called The General Son, and he's in favor of actually a secular state. He feels that this whole thing of exclusivity and ethno-states, he says it's a dead end, and he makes a good case, you know. So you might want to Google him. And then our other buddy that we always seem to find total agreement with is Jeffrey Sachs. You might Google any talks that he's had, because a lot of this stuff you can just sit in the comfort of your home and pull it up and listen to these wonderful discussions, right? As you have a drink, you know, and they're not to be missed. I mean, he's been wonderful on the Ukraine issues, but wonderful on Israel-Palestine, the history of, he has been an economist since the, before the fall of the Soviet Empire, and he's been there throughout all of this, and has so much very interesting perspective. So I'd really recommend you looking up for anything, strap on your favorite Google browser and go for it, you know, because it's just there just to be clicked on, and you can read all of this material. They describe things and discuss it so intelligently, you know, like, so I mean, we'd be ashamed to be in their company, how beautifully they expound their points of view. So Miko,
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I put Miko Peled's name in the chat. Did I spell it right?
Mikopeled.
Yeah, okay. I got it. Okay.
What a guy.
You know what? I totally endorse that. Miko Peled is a fantastic. I've had the luck to hear him speak a couple of times and read his book. Yeah, he's wonderful. And I mean, he is himself a Jewish Israeli from one of the prominent I guess we'd say, political Zionist families. So he has a lot of credibility.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I think his grandfather was one of the original signers of 1948 charter or whatever, and his father was, I think, a general during the '67 war. So not small time stuff here. I mean, and I think he lives in LA now because unfortunately he's on the outs. I mean, he's not a major opinion holder in Israel, but he does make people listen. So we're getting to that time. Any final questions or statements anyone would care to do? Otherwise, we will try to send out that information again on our SMPA mail list. So, but again, it's not hard to find a lot of this information. You can go to the JVP website, go to Google Miko Pele, Google Jeff Sachs Israel, and you'll find probably things he has said on YouTube. Real easy to do. So with that, anyone want to close out and have any? Okay, well, we're going to thank Dorah so much for the very, very splendid evening we've had. And I appreciate everyone's been very respectful and